Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video today, we're going to be going over what I believe is a much needed fix to what is currently one of the worst parts of playing Fortnite Battle Royale. Although Season 5 has included some pretty controversial gameplay changes, Epic really has done a great job by making it a priority to speed up gameplay in-game by adding new means of fast transportation. For the first 10 months of Fortnite, the only means of fast transportation was the launch pad, and in just the last 2 months alone, Fortnite has added shopping carts, ATKs, rifts, bouncers, and according to some recent leaks, Ziplines, which enable yet another fast method of transportation, are coming to Fortnite in the very near future. This change has pretty much eliminated hands down the most boring part of playing Fortnite, which is running in a straight line for what feels like miles without seeing any enemies, and I think we can all pretty much agree on that. I believe that much like they did in Season 5 by adding rifts and ATKs, Epic should constantly be looking to eliminate the most boring and unenjoyable aspects of playing Fortnite. And this video today is going to focus on one major example of exactly that. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So I'm going to start this video off today with a question. If I asked you guys, do any of you enjoy running in a straight line for 3 minutes without seeing a single enemy? I think it's pretty safe to say that the answer would be a unanimous no. So along the same lines, I'm guessing if I were to ask, do any of you guys enjoy spending 3 to 5 minutes mindlessly hitting trees to get enough materials for, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 build fights, I'd probably get the same answer. No matter how many nerfs are done to building, I can guarantee you with 100% certainty that it will always be a crucial part of being a great Fortnite player. And if you're always going to need to build to be a great Fortnite player, then you're also always going to need to farm materials to be a great Fortnite player. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but with the current rate of material farming in Fortnite, if you land in a lot of these towns without clear sources of abundant materials, there's going to be games where you literally spend 5+ minutes to simply farm enough materials to actually begin playing the game. And with an average Fortnite game lasting anywhere between maybe 15 to 20 minutes, that means even if you last until the very end, you spend 25 to 33% of your entire game mindlessly hitting either trees, rocks, or whatever the heck you decided to farm. And nobody wants that. So I think that's why it's pretty much a no-brainer for Epic to buff material farming in some way. Now this may sound like a change that would simply benefit the best players and make it harder than it already is for new players to improve. However, I think that this change would actually end up benefiting all players, from bad to great and everything in between. And let me explain why that is. So for the new, inexperienced, or just not so great players, one thing I've noticed that constantly holds them back is the unwillingness to farm up materials. And you may say, well, yeah, that's their own problem. They deserve to not improve if they aren't willing to put in the work and get the materials to improve. But at the end of the day, I don't even blame them for not wanting to farm up materials at the beginning of the game. If you're a newish player who loses the majority of engagements you get into to the more experienced Fortnite players, why in the world would you spend 5 minutes farming resources if you're just gonna die to the first person you run into most of the time? I talked about how if you last until the end of a game, 5 minutes is usually around 30% of the total game time. Well, if you die relatively early in a game, those 5 minutes you spent farming can be as much as 75, 80, or even 90% of the total game. That means that a lot of these newish or not so great players are just getting stuck in this constant cycle of non-improvement. Because let's say they do take the 5 minutes, farm up materials, and die 2 minutes later to the first person they see, well then they just spent about 80% of the game whacking trees and doing something that's just totally not enjoyable, and it's going to make them hate Fortnite even though they probably are improving slowly. On the other hand, if they say, hey, you know, I don't want to spend 5 minutes doing this super boring task, they're not going to improve as a builder and get stuck as just a low-level player because they're going to get outbuilt by any decent player playing the game. So that is why I think that this material buff would actually really benefit these new players trying to improve. And don't mistake it for lowering the skill gap. That's what some of the recent gameplay changes have done, where you can just get totally outplayed and, I don't know, spray down a building or C4 to the ground. This change would simply make it a little easier for new players to improve their skill, while also making the game so much less frustrating and boring for them. Because I'm sure hitting trees for 5 minutes and then dying 30 seconds later 3 games in a row is going to turn a new player off of Fortnite very quickly. I also think this change would benefit top level players in a much more simplistic way. Plain and simple, top tier players are going to take the time to farm enough materials that they need, no matter how long it takes. All this change would be doing to them would be making such a crucial part of the game so much less boring to play, and also so much less boring to watch. Adding on to that, I think this change would make top level competitive Fortnite also much more enjoyable. When you're in a lobby with 100 players who are all going to farm a ton of materials no matter what it takes, there's this very obvious early game lull. There'll be some fights in the first few minutes of the game since multiple teams will land in the same towns, but once those are over, you'll see these really boring periods where nobody is dying in the kill feed. Why is that? Because pretty much 100% of the lobby is sitting and hitting either trees or rocks for the most part. Another hidden benefit to competitive Fortnite of adding this buff to material farming would be the fact that one of the biggest reasons why top level players in these summer skirmish events try to avoid fights a lot of the time is because it simply isn't worth it. The materials that you lose, that you're going to need to use in a fight against either one or two other top players in the world, is not worth whatever else you're going to gain from that fight. You know, maybe you'll upgrade from a green AR to a purple SCAR, you'll upgrade your, I don't know, green tack to a blue tack, and maybe pick up 3 or 4 mini shields along the way, but that is definitely not going to be worth maybe the 700 or 800 wood that you're going to have to use in that fight to live to actually win it. It really hurts the spectating experience, and really the only way to change it is to buff material farming. So let's get into how that would actually be done in a fair and balanced way. I think the most simple and maybe the best overall material farming buff would be to increase the amount of materials gained by either a factor of 1.5 or 1.75. In my opinion, those are the most balanced figures. To give an example of how much that would improve material farming, for a 1.5 multiplier, a tree that normally gives 40 wood would now give 60 wood. And if it took, say, 4 minutes to get 999 wood, it would now take 2 minutes and 40 seconds. At the 1.75 multiplier, a tree that used to give 40 wood would now give 70 wood, and if it took 4 minutes to get 999 wood in the past, it would now take 2 minutes and 17 seconds instead of 2 minutes 40 seconds. So in my opinion, those are both considerable enough buffs to where I think every player that plays Fortnite would be really happy with them. I think, in my opinion at least, the 1.75 multiplier would be the best, because if you want to sit down and farm a ton of materials, it would still take a lot of time. It would simply make it quicker to get the minimum amount of materials that you would feel comfortable with, and just in general make the game a little bit more faster paced. The second improvement that I think would be a really interesting proposed buff to material farming would be to only buff when you hit the center circle when farming materials. I'm sure the majority of you guys watching this by now hopefully know already, but anytime you hit an object in Fortnite, this little light blue circle target-esque thing will appear on the object that when you hit it will speed up the rate that you destroy that object. But I think a really interesting buff to it that would also really help out material farming would be that hitting that light blue target would also give you a major multiplier on materials from that object. I don't think it would be any higher than the 1.5 or 1.75, maybe you could jump it up to 2, but this would make farming a little bit more skillful, I guess, if you want to even go that far, and I guess incentivize you to be a little bit more focused when farming. I think that's a big reason why people like speed farming methods, not only because it speeds up getting materials, but also plain and simple, it just gives you something to focus on while you're doing such a mind-numbingly boring task. So I think that'd be an interesting interesting little alternative to the first overall buff to material farming that I suggested. If Epic feels like they, I don't know, want to somewhat make hitting trees a skill-based activity, I guess that would be fine by me. So I know what most of you guys are going to say as a rebuttal if you're on the anti-buff material farming train. They're probably going to say something along the lines of, well, if you want to build like a crazy person, use a ton of materials, you should have to take a lot of time at the beginning and in the middle of games to farm those materials. And while I agree that's true, I think if Epic were to go overboard, which I know they never do, and maybe make it like playground mode where hitting 2 trees will give you max wood, that would ruin the game even more than the slow material farming rate is right now. But I think that a 1.5 or 1.75 multiplier to overall material farming would be that happy medium where you still need to take time out of your day if you want to get a ton of materials and risk not getting a lot of kills because you're spending so much of the game just sitting and hitting trees, but it also makes it so that you don't have to spend a quarter of the game getting the bare minimum materials for maybe 2 or 3 build fights. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave me a comment down in the comment section below. Do you think buffing materials is a necessity in Fortnite, or do you think in general Epic should just keep it how it is? It isn't broken, so don't fix it. I would definitely understand if some of you guys have that mindset. So leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe, do whatever the heck you want, and I will catch you guys next time.